Hey Axis, we're back with our third episode of our Christmas Advent series as we're looking at 4 words that are found throughout the Christmas story and are foundational to that Christmas story as well, and also really to our faith as Christians. We already talked about peace being this reality that God brings into our lives, and then last week we talked about hope being this tension and expectation for Jesus to return to ultimately bring that peace and that shalom into our lives. And today we're going to be getting into a word that is full of life and abundance, and there's a deeper meaning that we're going to be exploring. So without further ado, let's just get into it today. What makes you happy? Like, for real, I want to know what makes you happy. Maybe you just drop it in the comments and let us know. We'd love to know what makes you happy. Maybe we can bring that happiness into your life. But maybe what makes you happy is food, or it's pizza, or maybe it's that favorite show that you watch on Netflix. Maybe it's that significant other in your life that you love to spend so much time with. No matter what it is, there's probably a lot of things that make you happy. And happiness can kind of be fleeting at times, because even when we're sad, even when we're feeling down, we're not exactly sure what's going to quite get us out of that funk. We're not sure what's going to help us put us in a better mood or anything like that. Maybe you've been in those times where you just feel just so down. You're like, I just want to sit in my sadness. And that's okay, but we don't want to stay there. And it's important to know what's going to lift us out of that's going to help us be happy. So what I did is I reached out to a few of our students who I believe are some of the happiest people that I know. And I wanted to hear from them what makes them happy, and maybe it can help you out.
Things that make me happy would probably be books. I just love reading, and just the thought that I get to transfer into this new world that's not mine, and I just get transferred to it. So the problems or things that are making me upset or anything that's just bringing me down, I get transferred to a whole other world that is so many different things. It just makes me really happy, and sometimes you make connections with the book and everything, so it's fun, and connections to real life and everything. So yeah, and another thing that makes me happy would probably be spending time with my mom, just hanging out with her, because she makes me laugh a lot and everything. Just little inside jokes we have are just really fun. I know this will sound funny and everything, but math, I know this sounds really funny because school and everything, but I just figuring out the questions, and just this tiny little part where I realize it or figure out the answer is just so cool, especially with big numbers and everything. Just the thought that I know how to do it and someone else doesn't, or not that, but knowing that I can do something. I really like dancing and just the groove of it and everything, and when I do dance, I think I'm good at it, but yeah, it's so much fun, and it's also being active and everything, so it's not I'm not being active at all or anything. So spending lots of times with my friends and everything. My friends make me laugh so hard, even if I'm having a bad day, even if I'm feeling bad about something or something not gonna happen, if anything were to happen, I get an argument with my brother, or I have a disagreement with someone, just hanging out with my friends and them saying the funniest things ever, it just makes me laugh.
A few things that make me happy are, number one, painting, or really any type of art, because you can just express yourself no matter how you're feeling. You can throw it onto the paper, throw it on the canvas. There's no limits to what you can or can't do, and there's no right or wrong answer either. So it can look however you want, you can be however you want, and no matter what you do, it just makes me, at least, very, very happy to just see what I've created. The second thing would definitely be my job. I love my job with all my heart. The people there are great, the facility is great, and I just love what I do. And I find that when I'm there, I tend to be a lot happier. And it's just my comfort zone. When you're in your comfort zone where you feel like you're at the best where you can be, it tends to make you a lot happier than, let's say, somewhere that you're uncomfortable in, somewhere that you don't like. The third thing would definitely be my friends. I just have a really good relationship with a lot of them. They're not toxic, and that's always a good thing. You don't want to have toxic people in your life, because instead of bringing you up, they will just bring you down. And they're tough to find. So I'm very, very, very grateful for the friends that I do have, because they do make me feel happy no matter what the situation is. Sure, sometimes there are disagreements, but you get over them because that's life. We're human. No one's gonna agree on everything. And I find that I'm very, very happy when I get to talk to them, be around them, do things with them. Even just a phone call for like 2 minutes will make my day 1,000 times better. The fourth thing would definitely be teaching swimming lessons. I absolutely love, and it makes me so happy, and I just feel so rewarded watching these kids like grow from not being able to even put their foot in the water to being able to do underwater backflips and swim however far they want. And it just makes me so happy to know that I taught them how to do this and that they're comfortable learning around me, being around the other kids, and that they grow in their own confidence. I find it very, very, very rewarding.
Do you know what makes me happy? What makes me happy is things like bouldering and coffee. Love those things, they're fantastic. Good little climbing sesh and a great cup of espresso or a latte is so good. I also love playing with my daughter Alinea. Just her giggles are amazing. We have the best of times together. But another thing, what really makes me happy is spending time with people that I love and that I know care about me. And that in part has really been, as I reflect on this past year, has made this year probably more difficult than most, is that you just haven't been able to spend time with the people you care about and that care about you. Whether it's family or it's friends or even students that like they're just spending time with them, it puts a smile on my face. It makes me happy. But I want to say something about happiness, is that happiness is different from joy. That I may not be happy, but I can still be joyful. And that's an important difference to make. What I often like to say is that happiness is what happens, but joy is a choice. Happiness is like the emotional reaction to our circumstances, whereas joy is like a state of mind that I choose to be in. It's a state of mind where like I'm gonna rejoice no matter what. When we see in the Bible, we see people like Paul and we see others who were imprisoned, and they say even though they were in prison, they chose to rejoice. And that's a messed up concept that we have as Christians. Not in the sense that it's wrong, but in the sense that it's like, how do you even live that out? It's wild to me. But yet that is the difference between happiness and joy. That I can have my emotional reaction of anger or be sad or upset with the situation. That is my emotional reaction to that circumstance. That's what happiness is. Something good happens, it's like, I'm happy. I get pizza, I'm happy. I get a donut, I'm happy. But that's not really lasting joy, because joy is a choice. It's something I choose to be, which is a very powerful thing that we're going to talk about here. So we're going to turn to the Bible Project. We're going to hear what they have to say as they unpack this idea of this word, joy.
Being in a good mood is really great, and most languages have lots of words to describe the experience, like happy, cheerful, joyful, and so on. The same goes for the languages of the Bible. In ancient biblical Hebrew, there's a variety of words, like simcha, sason, or gil. In the Greek New Testament, there's kara, euphrosune, or agaliasis. Each word has its own unique nuance, but they all basically refer to the feeling of joy and happiness. Now, what makes these biblical joy words interesting is noticing the kinds of things that bring happiness, and also seeing how joy is a key theme that runs through the whole story of the Bible. Let's start with sources of joy. On page 1 of the Bible, God says that this world is very good. And so naturally, people find joy in beautiful and good things of life, like growing flocks or an abundant harvest on the hills. The poet of Psalm 104 says, a good bottle of wine is God's gift to bring joy to people's hearts. People find joy at a wedding or in their children. There's even a Hebrew proverb that compares the joy that perfume brings to your nose with the joy a good friend brings to your heart. However, human history isn't just a joy fest. The biblical story shows how we live in a world that's been corrupted by our own selfishness. It's marked by death and loss. And this is where biblical faith offers a unique perspective on joy. It's an attitude God's people adopt, not because of happy circumstances, but because of their hope in God's love and promise. So when the Israelites were suffering from slavery in Egypt, God raised up Moses to lead them into freedom. And the first thing the Israelites did was sing for joy. Even though they were in the middle of a desert, they were vulnerable, the promised land was still far away, they rejoiced anyway. Later biblical poets looked back on this story and they remembered how the Lord caused his people to leave with joy, his chosen ones with shouts of joy. This joy in the wilderness, this was a defining moment, a way of saying that the joy of God's people is not determined by their struggles, but by their future destiny. This theme appears later in Israel's story, when Israel suffered under the oppression of foreign empires. The prophet Isaiah looked for a day when God would raise up a new deliverer like Moses. That's when those redeemed by the Lord will return to Zion with glad shouts, with eternal joy crowning their heads. Happiness and joy will overtake them. And while the Israelites waited, they chose joy to anticipate their future redemption. This is why it's significant that when Jesus of Nazareth was born, it was announced as good news that brings great joy. We're told that Jesus himself rejoiced and gave thanks to God his Father when he began to announce the kingdom of God. He even taught his followers the same joy in the wilderness, saying, "When people reject you or persecute you for following me, rejoice, be very glad, because your reward is great in heaven." After his death and resurrection, Jesus commissioned his followers to go out and announce the good news that he was the risen King of the world. And as they did so, the early Christian communities were known for being full of joy, even when they were persecuted. Like when the Apostle Paul was sitting in a dirty Roman prison, he could say that he's chosen joy, even if he gets executed. He called this the joy of faith, or joy in the Lord. He believed it was the gift of God's Spirit, a sign that Jesus' presence is with you, inspiring hope in the midst of hardship. And when you believe that Jesus' love has overcome death itself, joy becomes reasonable in the darkest of circumstances. Now, this doesn't mean that you ignore or suppress your sorrow. That's not healthy or necessary. Paul often expressed his grief about missing loved ones or losing friends or his own freedom. He called it being full of sorrow and yet rejoicing. As he acknowledged his pain, he also made a choice to trust Jesus, that his loss wouldn't be the final word. This is very different from the trite advice to turn that frown upside down. Christian joy is a profound decision of faith and hope in the power of Jesus' own life and love. And that's what biblical joy is all about.
So joy is not just a passing feeling. It's not just something that comes by and we're like, hey, joy, it's great. Joy is not just a passing feeling, it's something more lasting. Joy is something for us to access. It's something for us to live into. It's something for us to choose to be regardless of the circumstances. And I've had some pretty low moments in my life. Like 5 years ago when I was diagnosed with cancer. I went through all the range and the spectrum of emotions from anger and sadness, and I experienced all of those as someone would in such a situation. There's moments where I questioned my faith or God. I questioned like, hey, why is this happening? I asked all those questions, and those would be reasonable for anyone to ask. But at the same time, I chose to be joyful because I chose that I knew that God was in control, and I chose to be joyful because I knew at the end of it that there was a hope that we talked about last week. There was a hope that Jesus was going to come. That Jesus is going to come back, he's going to fix everything, he's going to rid the world of cancer, that I wouldn't even have to deal with it anymore. I wouldn't have to have checkups or anything like that. I wouldn't have to have any treatments or anything. But Jesus was going to come back and renew and restore everything. That he was going to bring that shalom and that peace. And that was that joy that I got to experience. That's just this the hope and the expectation was there, but I got to like rejoice that the fact that was gonna happen. I got to live into it in the moment. And we get access to that, but joy is actually this state of mind, is this choice that we have as followers of Jesus. And I know this has been a hard year for students to be joyful, for anyone to be joyful. Maybe you missed out on graduation. Maybe you missed out on hanging out with your friends as much as you thought. Maybe there were celebrations you missed. I'm sure there's been so many missed moments this year that robbed us of those moments of joy. But I want to be reminded that joy is something we choose. We choose to be joyful. We choose to rejoice in the midst of everything. So what I did is I asked again those same students, who I believe these students are embodiments of joy. That whenever I see them, they're always positive. They are always choosing to be joyful regardless of their circumstances. No matter what they face, that they've chosen to be joyful. So I commend them for that. But I want to hear from them how they chose, what it means for them to choose joy. Let's listen what they have to say.
I'm very joyful in the word joy. Kind of like in Inside Out. Joy is always happy. Even if something bad happens or something, she's always the happiness of the group and everything. I feel like I'm that for my family and I'm that for my friends and everything, personally, because I will literally just be so happy and I have no reason to be happy, like zero reason. I'll just be sitting in the car listening to random music or something, even if I don't like the music, and I'll just be smiling, like, be like, okay, I'm doing good today, like, for like no reason, or literally I'll just start laughing because this random funny thought happened in my head. It was just like, oh, I remember that time this happened, or remember that joke, and it's just like, I get so happy, even though sometimes things might be going wrong or something, or I messed up on something, or I get a wrong answer for a quiz or test or something. I'm so joyful for like no reason. I mean, I have reasons, but like reasons I don't understand. Like physically understand, I just don't. And it's good, but it's also like other people might be in a bad mood, but I'm still happy, and then sometimes that makes them happy, and then it's like, then everyone's happy there. And I feel like I can just make people smile, and a lot of the time I do make people smile, and I think that's good, because when I do go to youth and everything, I just get so happy because I'm spending time with people who understand what it's like to believe in God, and some people I know don't really do that, but they still support me in believing in God. I think it's really fun to hang out with people who do, and especially the fun games we get to play at youth and everything. I just laugh so hard and I'm just really happy. So I don't think I really choose to be joyful, I just am. And I just feel like a lot of people are like, we just have to look around and see it sometimes. Look at what we choose to be happy for or joyful for. So, yeah.
For me, what it looks like when I choose to be joyful would be finding the good in tough situations. Bad, tough situations. So if I'm just having a bad day at work, and the others are too, if we're all just in a bad place, we're not really having a good day, I find that if you're happy and you just choose to find the good in what happened, say there's something funny that happened that day or a happy moment, if you think about that and you just keep replaying it in your mind, you tend to become happier, and the others around you will too, because they'll realize that, hey, this person isn't upset anymore, why should I be? So they'll start to pick up on that, pick up on your behavior, and soon like everyone will be happy. Obviously it won't always work, but I choose that it definitely works for me, makes me feel better. And yeah, that's what it means when I choose to be joyful.
Well, everyone, thanks for joining us today as we talk about joy. I want you to be reminded that joy is something that you choose. Joy is something that you choose. And that you may be facing some circumstances that make you maybe not want to choose joy, that maybe you want to sit in these feelings of being depressed and upset. And those are okay, those are valid things to go through. But I believe that God has a bigger plan that's outside of our range of emotions, that He actually has this state of mind, this reality that He offers to us to be joyful. Not just joyful because of what's happening to us, but to be joyful, not even joyful because of how we feel, but we choose to be joyful because of who He is and this great hope that we have in Jesus coming back. That we can rejoice in our faith in Jesus, in who Jesus is and the life that He offers us both here and now. That even then we get to experience freedom, that we get to experience forgiveness, that we get to experience this unconditional love that God has to offer us. And that's what we get to rejoice in. We get to have joy in the midst of that. Even in the midst of this Christmas season during a pandemic, that we get to experience joy. So I want to encourage you to find those moments of joy to where you can choose joy even when you don't feel like it. And that might be hard for you to do, but I want to encourage you to do so. And more than that, if you're having a hard time doing that, reach out, message us. We're here for you. If you have my number, text me. Would love to reach out to you and see how we can help better support you. And maybe you need to have a further conversation about what joy looks like to you. We'd love to have that conversation with you. So let me just pray for you. I want to pray for all of our families, all of our students who are maybe struggling with joy, struggling to choose joy in the midst of their circumstances, because we're all dealing with hard things. I get that. I get that we're dealing with difficult circumstances in a pandemic, but even in our own personal lives as well. So I want to pray that God would bring joy in your life this Christmas season. God, I thank you for all of our students, all of our families that are part of this church, a part of Access and our youth ministry as well. I ask that you would bring joy into their lives. I ask that for those that are experiencing depression, that you would give them relief of that, even if it's just for a moment, that they would be able to experience deep, profound joy, that they would get to experience the joy that is found in you, that makes them dance around, makes them want to jump around, that makes them want to sing to music and all of that, that joy that is everlasting, that joy that can weather any emotional spectrum, that can weather any circumstance, that joy that is everlasting. God, would you fill them with joy? I ask for an abundance of joy in students' lives, that it would be overflowing, that it would almost be like they'd enter a room and their laugh, their smile would be contagious, that it would make other people happy and joyful this Christmas season. I ask that you would, for students to find joy in you, to find joy in you, Jesus, even in their darkest moments, in those moments where they feel like they can't even smile, they feel like there's just this deep darkness within them, that there would be a joy they would find in you that would push the darkness away, that would be this light in the darkness that would bring a light to every area of their lives. That God, would you fill them with joy even in their darkest moments? And would you, that joy outshine and outlast all of their emotions? God, I just see this picture of the emotions in their lives, that it was just this joy, that no matter what emotion they feel, that joy would be this thread, this light that is shining over all. So God, I pray for a joy that outshines and outlasts every emotion they may experience, whether it's sadness or anger or anything. God, I ask that you would just have this joy that outshines all of their emotions in Jesus' name. God, we thank you for these students. We ask you to bless them this Christmas season and help them to bring joy into someone else's life today. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you all for joining us. We're going to bring our last episode in just a few days, right before Christmas Eve. So look forward to that. And until then, stay active here on social media. We want to reach out to you. We're going to have a few things happening here just to stay engaged with you. But otherwise, we hope you have a wonderful Christmas with your family. And we want to encourage you again, be people of peace, bring that into your homes and into your cities. Be people who are hopeful, who have a hope in mind, but also when it comes to joy, be people who bring joy everywhere that you go. Bring joy with you. We love you, family. We'll see you next time.